All right, so at the beginning of each chapter of material, I'm just going to give you some background information about what that chapter is going to cover. And so there's no math here, and there's no homework involved in any of the 1.0 or 2.0 or 3.0 sections. Those are just they're just introductions to the concepts that are going to be covered in that chapter. And since this is the very first chapter, maybe I should give you a brief introduction to the course in general. Okay, so Precalculus is a review of all of the algebra and trig that you've seen so far in your math career. We also will go over a little bit of new information as well. But the idea of the course is to make sure that you're prepared algebraically for what you're going to encounter in calculus. So to that end, right, in chapter 1, we're going to introduce a couple of things that maybe you've never seen before. So we're going to talk about 3 things in chapter 1. We're going to talk about sets, we're going to talk about linear equations, and then we're going to talk about limits and derivatives. Sets are like a fundamental tool in mathematics. We use sets to describe like solutions to equations and inequalities. We use sets to describe domains and ranges of functions. We use sets to describe different sets of numbers that are useful for understanding different theorems, like the rational roots theorem, for example, which is something that we'll cover in this class. You have to understand, in order to understand that theorem, you need to know what rational numbers are. You need to know what integers are. You need to know what real numbers are. So all of those things relate back to sets. So we're going to spend a few sections talking about sets. And then we're going to review linear equations. And at the same time, we'll talk a little bit about functions and make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of how function notation works. But linear equations are just, they're the building blocks for all of the other kinds of equations that we solve. So it's important that we have a solid understanding of those. And then we'll finish the chapter by talking about limits and derivatives. Limits and derivatives are really a calculus topic. The focus in this class is going to be on the algebra behind those concepts. So we're really not aiming to get a deep conceptual understanding of limits and derivatives, because that will be something that you will do in your calculus class, right? So my main reason for introducing limits and derivatives here is because a lot of the problems that students have in calculus is really not with the calculus, it's with the algebra behind them. It's a common complaint among calculus instructors that their students can't do algebra. And it's my belief that the reason we have this perception as calculus instructors is not because you can't do algebra, it's just because you haven't been exposed to the kind of algebra that you're going to have to be comfortable doing in calculus. So the only way you're going to be comfortable with that is if I show you the kinds of algebra problems that you're going to see in calculus. And that means exposing you to limits and derivatives right from the get-go, so that as we move through the rest of the course and we're reviewing different kinds of functions and stuff, we can talk about limits and derivatives as we go. So again, as far as limits and derivatives are concerned, I'm really not aiming for like a deep conceptual understanding of those things. That's something that you would do in calculus. But what I do want you to know really well is the algebra behind those concepts. So that's going to be the focus in chapter 1. So chapter 1 is kind of a hodgepodge of topics, but they're all related in the sense that they are good background information that we will need in order to thoroughly understand the stuff that follows in the rest of the course. So so that's kind of the flavor of chapter 1, and I will see you in section 1.1.